a jacket out of one pattern piece? Today, we're gonna find out. I was going through my vintage patterns and I found this one and was totally intrigued. It's one pattern piece and it only takes 1 yard of fabric. So let's sew it up and see what it's all about. The pattern says it's quick and easy, but check out this pattern piece. It is so intriguing to me. I wonder what kind of fun new things we're gonna learn today. Or I'm wondering what kind of weird sewing challenges am I gonna run into when creating this one-piece jacket? There's always something when you're sewing, right? So let's get into creating this one-piece jacket. The first thing I'm gonna do is cut it out. So the most interesting thing right now is that center back is placed on fold. This here is the sleeve and the front of the jacket ends up on a bias over here. So that is going to be on a nice bias, just like the pattern piece here is showing on the outside of the envelope. So this is super different. I have not cut out a pattern like this before, and I'm loving it. We also have a few facing pieces to cut out, so that way we can finish the edges of our jacket. And now we're all done cutting everything out. This is what our one-piece jacket looks like when it's unfolded. Now we need to turn it into a jacket. Can you believe that this right here looks like a scrap chunk of fabric is going to turn into a beautifully fitted little crop jacket? Well, let's see how this is gonna work out. Let's start sewing it together. So the pattern has these really cool side darts coming from the side seam. So I've marked those on the wrong side of my fabric here. And you can see that they follow that bias that's there with the plaid, which is super cool. I love that little detail. So they should just kind of blend right into this fabric when we sew them up. And if you're sewing something right now and you need some help marking some darts, make sure you check out my video on marking darts. Let's head over to the sewing machine and start sewing this baby up. Okay, let's sew up some darts. These are some really teeny darts. We're done with 2. Now we're gonna do 2 more darts. And we're done with our darts. So check out these darts. They are right there in that plaid hiding. And you can see that from coming from the side seam up to the bust, that they're creating shape here for the bust because this little jacket is going to be very fitted because this is just a quarter of the jacket, side seam to center front. So we've got these darts in here and I'm just kind of putting this on the front of me because I'm a little bit worried that it might not fit me after. This is a really fitted jacket, so there is not a lot of room for air, but I guess we'll see. So now I'm going to serge all of my edges so I have a nice professional clean finish. If you don't have a serger with your projects, you can zigzag or overcast them as well. And we are done serging, yay! So this super cute little jacket does have double welt buttonholes, but I've decided not to do them because my fabric's real thick and I don't want anything to go wrong. So I'm just gonna do a regular facing and then do my buttonholes at the end with the machine. So that means we're just gonna jump right into the facing next. So there are 2 facings to finish off center front and the neck. They did not build this as one facing, even though I think they should have. Vintage patterns are interesting like that sometimes. So what we're going to do is sew the front facing here on first, and then we're gonna flip it under, edge stitch it, top stitch it down, and then we're gonna put on the neck facing, which is gonna finish off the neck, and it's also gonna overlap at the front here a little bit. So this is going to be a little bit interesting, a little bit extra fabric here. If I was pattern drafting, I definitely would not have done that. So let's go over and see how this all turns out with these additional pieces. Now I'm going to sew on the front facing here. Because this is on a bias on the front, it is wanting to stretch out a little bit, so I'm having to ease it into the facing. Okay, so we've got the corners finished here, and we're gonna wanna flip this out, but you can see the corners are real round. So I'm going to clip these back, especially with this big bulky fabric that I'm using. We're gonna do that to both ends here. So we've got one side sewn on. I'm gonna sew the other side next, and then we'll do our top stitching after I iron it. So for this one, to keep the bulk of the fabric to the outside, I'm going to be starting at the bottom. This one didn't stretch out as much, which is interesting. The other one really stretched out when I sewed it. We're just gonna clip those corners. Oh, we didn't sew the bottom on that. We gotta sew the bottom. Clip away that extra. Okay, now we can flip it. Push those corners out, and we are looking good. Now we gotta get that neck piece on. You'll notice that the neck facing overlaps the front facing. I know this seems weird, but it's gonna work out beautifully. Okay, back stitch and cut. So you can see how this back neck facing here overlaps the front facing on both sides. And that's totally okay. So when we end up flipping it out, you'll notice that the neck facing is under the front facing, and it's gonna have a nice clean edge. Obviously you can see the serge, that's fine, that's a clean edge. If you didn't wanna see it, you could always tuck that under first and stitch it down. But I'm totally fine with seeing the serge there because it's a nice clean edge. So now what we're going to do is clip along the curve, and we're gonna go iron everything really nice. Yay! So the facing is on and it's looking really nice. So I really like the modern technique of using the serger and having the edges overlapped like that. That's the fun thing about sewing, is that you can add modern techniques to vintage patterns and they'll go that much faster and quicker to sew, and they look that much nicer in my opinion too. So next is hand stitching down the facing. But hello, boring, who wants to watch me hand stitch that down? So you can just imagine me hand stitching down that facing. And now we're gonna move on to sewing up the underarm seam, so that way we can check it out and try it on. So next we are just sewing up this short little side seam and the underarm seam here. And we're gonna do that on both sides. So you can see the jacket is really coming together fast. This jacket is coming together so quick that I think it would be paired perfectly with the walkaway dress. And you could call it the walkaway dress for dinner time, because you could make a cute little dinner jacket to match your walkaway dress. And if you don't know what that is or what I'm talking about, make sure you check out my video on that vintage dress pattern. Now we're gonna sew up these seams here. And then after this, we only have a few steps left, which is so exciting. Now we are done with those major side seams. Our progress is looking great on this jacket. So you can see we have these beautiful darts in here. We have these beautiful bias plaid lines on the front of the jacket. I just love that feature so much. The neck and center front is finished off really nice. The sleeves have a built-in facing, so I have ironed those in an inch and I can hand stitch those down later. And now we just need to finish off the bottom here. So the bottom still has a raw edge with our serge. So we are going to sew these facing pieces together for the hem, just right here at this seam. And then we're gonna stitch it all the way around the bottom, turn it under and hand stitch it down. We are just so close to trying this on. I am super excited. It's like going shopping and finding the perfect dress and just falling in love with it, only we're sewing it up and then we get to try it on and wear it. Backstitch and cut, and we made it to the end here. So the facing is all finished and we have one step last, and that's the buttons. So these buttonholes on here are very interesting because if you look at the sketch here, the buttonholes are on an angle and they're following the line of the plaid. So I love that. We are gonna keep that. I'm gonna put my buttonholes on an angle. I have never done that before, so this should be interesting. And I'm going to be using 5 buttons instead of 3 buttons. So I've mixed some leather buttons with some rhinestone buttons. So, you know, a little texture, a little color. We're mixing it up here. We're having fun. So if you need help putting on buttons and buttonholes on your project, make sure you check out my videos on that. So let's go sew some buttons and buttonholes on this vintage but new jacket. I got my buttonhole marked out, I got my button foot on, and I am ready to make 5 buttonholes. So let's do it. So you can see our buttonholes on the diagonal here, running with the plaid, which is really fun. I know they're hard to see on this side. They're a little easier to see on the back here. So we are going to open these up. My favorite way to open up buttonholes is with an X-Acto blade. It's gonna give you a nice clean edge and just run it right down the center of your buttonhole. You can see what a nice clean edge that gives you. They just open right up. Make sure you're using a nice sharp X-Acto and just be really careful if you're using this. Make sure you have a protective mat down as well. You don't want to ruin any of your tables or surfaces. Okay, so now that all of our buttonholes are open, we need to sew down our buttons. So now we are going to sew down all of our buttons right where I have the heads of these pins, and then we finally get to try on this super cute jacket. So let's get sewing some buttons. Let's take a look at the sketch on the outside of the pattern and the jacket we just made and compare it. So you can see that we also used a plaid fabric. So we have those beautiful diagonal lines of the bias of the fabric. And then we also kept true to the diagonal buttonholes, but I added 5 buttons instead of 3. And then we kept the length of the sleeve bracelet length, which I love. And it's a nice cropped little jacket. So this is great for skirts, high-waisted jeans, etc. And I love these darts that come up on an angle as well. So I really just love all the angles that play in this jacket. And this was super easy to sew together. Here it is. We finished the jacket and I think it looks just like the pattern. This was a really fun thing to sew up, especially since it was only one pattern piece and it gave us a beautiful bias in the front. And it does fit good. I was really worried that it wasn't going to fit me, but it does fit great. So you can check out the back that's on the straight grain. We've got our beautiful sleeves here that are bracelet length. I'm missing some bracelets today, clearly. So throughout the process of creating this vintage 60s jacket, I added my own modern sewing techniques to it, like serging all the edges, doing the facing a little bit differently. I used the buttonholer on the sewing machine, so I didn't do the double bound buttonholes. You know, totally okay. That's the fun thing about sewing, is taking your own personal twist and style and adding it to whatever it is you are creating. But overall, I would say we stayed really true to the overall design and silhouette of the design. I did not change the pattern at all. This is exactly how it came out of the little paper envelope. So after I sewed the walkaway dress a few weeks ago, it inspired me to start sewing up more vintage patterns. I have a lot of vintage sewing patterns and I love the little sketches on the outside of them. That's why I collect them. I think they're so cute and inspirational, but I never really sew them up because I'm a designer and I can just design my own patterns. So recently I decided, you know what? I'm gonna start sewing up some of these really cute little patterns. And I'd love to know what you guys thought about this video and the process of sewing up a vintage pattern. Did you like that I added new modern sewing techniques to it? If you did, leave it down below. I'd love to know your thoughts on it. And let me know if you'd like to see more videos where I sew up true vintage patterns. I would love to know, so that way I know to either make them or not make them, right? Thanks so much for watching Sewing Anastasia today. I hope you enjoyed my video on remaking a vintage pattern. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, give it some applause, and leave a comment down below because you know I want to know your thoughts. And if you don't already follow Sewi Anastasia, make sure you subscribe to Sewi Anastasia and hit the notification bell so you know when all my new videos come out. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for watching today. And don't forget to follow along on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all the social media sites, so that way we can stay connected and creative together. Also, I teach sewing classes in my design studio here in Chicago, Illinois. So come on in, take some classes with me, or you can take them virtually online as well. So check those out at sewianastasia.com. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.